So I just think it's a little unfair that I'm competing against nobody. So you should know this, that I'm the only guy doing stuff there, except people who have to do with like advertising and all that stuff. So hello world. I want to do kind of like a brief bio about myself. I don't come from like a computer science background or like a science background or like an anything logical background. I mean, I literally graduated like a couple months ago, and I was in art school. So I come from a strictly design background. So all this programming stuff, I pretty much taught myself just to get through the day. So like all you guys are doing like algorithms, I don't even know what that is, you know. So stop me if I guess I'm dumbing things down. So I just I wanted to just show. I was looking at stuff because you got a show and tell. But then I was looking at all the stuff I've done throughout my college career. It's like ridiculous. Like I think I did this thing. That was a painting I did a couple of years ago, and then I did like big mech drawings for my illustration class, and then just random illustration stuff. I used to just draw all the time. I never saw myself. I did an entire series of disemboweling weapons for a game, but so I started off designing like vacuum cleaners in school and cell phones, and then I realized that that's really boring. So then I went into like drawing mouses with swords and stuff, and it was a great time. And then I had to drop out of that school, and I came back down, and I joined my school paper, and then it sucked. So I was like, let me redesign it for you and like not make it suck. So then that's how I got into the whole journalism. I started off as a print designer. I wasn't really a web designer, and then now I'm here, doing stuff. So
what's your paper design?
Yeah. It's just. So this thing actually won like an award or something.
No, that's nice.
So and then it was all the format too, which I guess I'll touch a little bit. Like design is a lot about how things are done, just not how they look. So this whole section, the briefing thing, is just a bunch of really small articles that otherwise would get ignored. But it's like, hey, that's a lot of content that you can just like fill pages with. And then, of course, the beer spread. I wrote that story. And then I started working for the Herald. I guess this is one of my favorite projects from there. And this is a double truck for a tab. It was like some crazy thing that this economics reporter did. He like converted how indicators performed, and he's like, it's kind of like I-95. And I'm like, okay. Let's just draw a bunch of trucks. Like, that's cool. And then I got laid off from the Herald, which it happens in journalism. And then I started doing online producing, which is how I started learning HTML and CSS and not really JavaScript. And I was doing, I did little simple HTML and CSS projects. Like this was, every year they do, I guess, the photographers pick their favorite images, and usually it's just like a nasty gallery that gets thrown on the site and nobody can find it. So it's like, hey, this is like something important that you're devoting pages in print for. Why does it suck online? So I don't know. It just took like an hour. Not really online. It took like 6 hours. But I was really bad at that time. But I stole this plugin that generates. I don't know what it did. I still don't know what it does. It just counts sections and it builds a navigation for you. And the rest is just HTML and CSS. This was a time during my, I guess, web design career where like I would spend most of my time picking out a font and not making it work. So let's see. So then I also interned at NetGeo, where I did just print stuff and like helped produce stuff for the iPad version of the magazine. Then I worked for the Seattle Times for a summer. And I worked on this with another intern, which is like, I did a lot of the design and some of the coding. It's, how much CEO paid, a bunch of little bar charts. All right, so if you too long, TLDR, I really just kind of went along with it and kind of made it my thing, but I'm sort of doing, I'm doing digital parts of the Herald, so if they don't like me, it sucks for them. But, so I decided to break up the presentation by kind of the evolution of the type of things I've done. The very early stuff I did was, I didn't know anything about databases. I still kind of don't. So I was working with Carol Rosenberg, who's our Guantanamo reporter, and there was a hunger strike going on in Gamio. And she's like, look, there's like this list that we made that just says, oh, in this day is this many doing this many doing that. But it's boring, and I have to like get up every morning and like turn on my computer and find a reliable internet connection so I can open our CMS and I can go in the story. She's like, can I just punch in the 3 numbers and you can, everything else happens by itself? So I'm like, yeah, okay, I'll figure it out. 6 weeks later, we made this thing. Of course it doesn't work. This is what happens. See, this is just a bad URL. And you're going to hit the paywall, or not. We will hit the paywall at some point. So we made this thing, essentially, all she did every morning was like punch 3 numbers in into a Google spreadsheet. And then there's this JS library called Tabletop, which makes requests to Google, and then it scrapes the spreadsheet data, turns it into JSON, and then it gives it back to you. Then, using something called handlebars, you take the JSON data, and then you compile it into a template, which it's like so easy. You just say, here, put this data here, put that data here. And then, it looked okay, but the source code is disgusting. It really is like so bad now that I'm looking at it. I had to do something to maintain this a couple of weeks ago, and I had the worst time of it ruined my week. But and then it's kind of boring now. Nobody's hunger striking, and then they just stopped getting her information, so she kind of just gave up. I guess she's still updating. She's pretty diligent. That was a really simple setup. It was no database work. It was just a lot of CSS and just figuring it out. And I really don't know. I did not know what I was doing. I was just like, if it works, and then it worked. So I was like, what else can I do with this? So we did this thing where it's like people voted for their most important player. So we count the votes and big circles. It's a nice little interactive thing, and punch some numbers, and that's it. We also did this simple legislative tracker. Again, this is one of those things where in the paper, at the end of this Florida session, we're like, let's just run a list of every single bill, that passed or failed or everything, and let's just print it in the paper. Well, I'm like, that's useless, and I'm like, how are you going to put that online? Is it just going to be like a story that like you expect people to do like Command F to find the bill they're interested in? It's like, no. So same thing, tabletop, handlebars, and then I use a thing called Isotopes, which is a really cool jQuery plugin that lets you sort and filter, based on CSS classes. So hey, just the business ones. I don't know, just the general government ones. They'll show me all, but then just the ones that passed. So this is much more useful, and it really it's just turning a story into data, which should always be that way.
That's cool. What's the URL for that?
Actually, I'm going to share this presentation with you guys, so you'll have everything. And this was another one that in retrospect should have done. Because, there's a long story behind this one. So the Center of Medicare and Medicaid Services, just one day, all of a sudden, they're like, hey, we're going to release I guess every single hospital in the United States charges for 50 different procedures. So it was a really, really bad day, because they gave us the same papers ahead of time, but then the Washington Post had a graphic that compared what the UM hospital charges versus Jackson. And it showed that UM charged almost twice as much for like a hip replacement. So then our editors were rightly pissed, and they're like, man, we have to do something because this is ridiculous. So I'm like, okay, let's see what we can do. And then I picked apart some data, and it really just lets you compare Doctors Hospital to, Kendall Regional, and then it has like little cards for each procedure. And then all this is done. This was a really bad idea on my part. This is all these calculations are done in a Google spreadsheet, and then the data gets pulled in. It wasn't fun. And then that's it. That was kind of the early work of me, making stuff that was, I guess, more procedural. If it's just design, it's like, yeah, I can design a nice paragraph and set some nice type online, but this is more data intensive and learned a lot of stuff. So then I started getting into mapping, because people like maps, and everybody thinks whenever you have data, it's like, yeah, it's mapping. It's like, it's not really something you can map, but I made maps. So the first map I made of the Herald was this school gun incident map. So every gray circle is a school with no gun incidents, and every red one is a school with gun incidents. And then larger circles obviously mean more bad gun stuff. And then click on the circles, and then it gives you like a little list of everything that happened there. And it's also responsive. And then a word of advice never make a map responsive. It's not fun. I don't know what I did. Here we go. So if you notice,
just because it gets nasty or what?
Well, I mean, okay. So maps are extremely data heavy. So when you try to load it on a phone, it will load. But then it depends on the tile server you use. Because right now you're on the desktop, so all these tiles, these map tiles, are loading really fast. This is also a free service, so sometimes it doesn't work nice. But one thing I did to make it responsive, you know, I think there's a specific measurement for how big your fingertip is in pixels. It's 40 pixels by 40 pixels. So I had to kind of just throw out all like, oh, that's my tiny little circles for you know schools with no gun incidents. So now you have all these big clunky circles that you click on and you get information. You go back to map because you know stuff. But it's, you know, let's reload it so you see all the circles are nicer and it looks a little more refined. So then I also made a point map template. So I you know, there's a very big benefit to having reporters being able to update things in a Google Doc. So I made this thing where it's powered by a Google Doc, and it says you just feed it a longitude and latitude, and it builds out all this information for you. But that never got used because you can just list it really. And then this is actually one of the maps that I really enjoyed making because it was a lot. It wasn't just a map. It wasn't just mapping a thing, but it was an entire interface of the map, and the map moved and did things, and it was a good time. So pretty much Miami Gardens has lots of gang incidents, and then we map them all. And what it is, you know, the map, and you can click, you know, the incident information at the bottom updates, and then you can also hit next and previous, and then the map moves and tells you where the incident happened. And you know, it was fun. It was rigging everything together, and I don't know, I like this one. Also, here's my favorite part of it. So when you make it small, let's reload it. So this is what it looks like, you know, big, right? But then when you make it small, I wrote a little script that zooms the map out, so then you know it still fits in when you're looking at it on your phone. And it's just, that was just fun. It's a nice little detail that I enjoyed. All right, so then these are one of my more intensive data projects that I did after I actually learned JavaScript. And you know, just I really don't work with databases. I just export everything to a big JSON file and just hope for the best.
That's a dangerous practice, my friend.
Whatever. Nobody's gonna notice. Nobody knows. None of my bosses know what JSON is.
Quick question.
Yeah.
Isn't there any APIs on the Google Docs?
Well, yes, there are, but luckily I think the Herald apps don't get that much traffic, and also.
Not that much.
Really not. It's a local newspaper. Come on. Really?
Oh, wow.
No, really, it's really not that bad. And it's like it's a one-off. So it's not something that you're bringing people back. I mean, you should, but it's like you're not bringing them back. Every they're not using it 12,000 times a minute. Maybe you get like 500 hits a day if you're lucky. But tabletop. Google kind of broke tabletop because there's a really weird bug that if you have an expired Google session. Then it'll ask you to log in to then it's stupid. So I just stopped using it for that reason because it breaks too often and it's just like okay, there's no point of it. But so I put an interactive graphic on the homepage. So let's go to the Herald site. So in this big well here in the middle. We put this thing where it was just, it's a jQuery UI slider, and then it just changes numbers based on, age. And we put that on the homepage, which I guess has never been done before, and this is a cool little thing to play with. And this is all just JSON, so, when the slider changes, it just picks up a different object in the JSON array. We also worked on this cool little rogues gallery. Of course. never trust floats. So it was just a bunch of pictures, right? And it's all these people who sold an insane amount of money from the government. And comments are the best part. Really restore your faith in humanity. But you can search for names. There's a lot of Lazaros because they're all Cuban. And you can reset it, and then you can organize by different things. So country, lots of Cubans. It's the crime of choice for us. And then by money, how much money they stole, you make little janky bar charts.
So this whole thing was all jQuery?
Well, no, this was. I use jQuery in it, but it's it's just JavaScript, HTML, CSS, and but the data all lives in JSON format. And you can inspect the JavaScript if you want. It's kind of messy, but so yeah, this is just a fun little thing. And I worked with a reporter on this, and it was one of those cases where I had actually hooked it up with Tabletop to a Google Doc first, but then it was good for production. But then when you deploy it, it's like you don't want to have those issues of like, oh man, Google didn't respond, and now we have a blank page if it does nothing. So one of those. Let's see what else. Okay, then we translated it, if you guys care about that. It's in Spanish also. You can pick your language. Then I guess these are the ones that are going to be fun. So one more map. So we did, this runs off Tabletop actually. And then kind of a refined bubble map from that very first one I showed. And this is just jobs lost, in the state of Florida, because of something called the WARN Act, where I think if a company larger than a certain amount of employees is going to lay people off, they have to tell the state. And it was part of a series, the Rick Scott series, where it's like this guy is like, oh, I'm going to bring 700,000 jobs to the state, and he did it. So this is one of those takedowns. But cool thing is that with Leaflet, which is the mapping library, you can bind elements in your DOM to do things to a map. So this is a fun little thing there. Just want to see Pensacola. But then this is the crazy one, which was a lot of mapping, and that was hard for me because I'm not hard nature. So this all runs up the Tabletop, and it feeds data, and then it adds it all up, and it generates this dynamically. And then it also, when the data loads, it's just individual entries. So then when it loads, it takes each item and then puts them in county baskets to build this map so it can actually do that. And then it also returns individual county level data here. And then you can sort the data too. So these are all individual entries that comes in as one gigantic, disgusting JSON, file or format. And then it gets sorted into pretty little baskets. And you can, there's both a drop-down list. Okay, that's not that impressive. Leon, there we go, 2 promises. Or you can, click on Broward, and then you have a little sticky header. You can do a bunch of things. I don't know, what else does it do? All incentives, you can see all of them. 342 promises made. Everything adds up, so that's good. I think this has been the most. I wish you could just see the source code. I don't even remember. This is a nightmare to do, actually. It was just not the greatest time. So this is how it gets called in.
Made by laws.
Yeah.
Every project comes up like, what byline makes this? Let me see.
I don't give myself a byline, so you put it in the JavaScript because the people who care are going to look at it. So, but it gets complicated. There's a lot of messy JavaScript there. I can talk about it in more detail to the people who want to do that. And I guess the latest, big, thing I've done was with Cal Rosenberg again, where it was portraits of people who are in Guantanamo. She has all these creepy pictures of people that are, accused terrorists, and you build this. I built this, and then you click, and then it gives you more information about them. You can use your arrow keys to navigate it, and just the layout. This guy's my favorite.
That is
that guy is epic. This one guy, it's just no. This guy's it's just fucking great. Yeah, it's it's a really interesting little project. So I guess one of what Rebecca was showing you was the Rick Scott Jobs Project, which is like a big series, and it was a responsive story format and everything.
All those masks sprung out of that project. I mean, they came.
Yeah,
everything with it.
exactly. Yeah, they came with it. So there's like an entire like narrative to how like these story formats came about. Before I went to go intern at Seattle, I got stuck with this project about the convention center plans in Miami Beach. And then it was kind of like a prototype for all the stuff that came after. And then this was a nightmare because it was all actually hand-coded HTML. So all the paragraphs were there. That was fun. And then if they wanted to fix, I had to like go find it and like change it into it. Yeah, it was not fun. But it's a story. It has nicer typography than these Herald stories are. First of all, there's no heads. But I mean, 2008 called, So nicer typography, and then we also put interactive graphics in there. So I want to see the ACE plan, the Portland plan, and then this looks fancy, but it's really a bunch of PNGs on top of each other. So it's really not, it's not.
So you'd maybe do it a little differently now.
Probably, yeah. I'd actually make it an interactive graphic. Not, it's literally a bunch of PNGs that are the exact same size that are all on top of each other. But I mean, it worked. And then you have galleries, and then you scroll down, and then this thing changes depending on what part of the building you're comparing.
Yeah.
I mean, this was the first one. It's like kind of multimedia heavy, and then people commented on it, which is a good thing. And so I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. So they just, I guess the mayor of Miami Beach just
they
killed that project.
Yeah.
I mean, are they going to do it again, or are they?
I don't know. I mean,
just going to mix it?
Knowing Miami Beach, you're never going to build a convention center.
That probably makes sense, actually.
That probably does make sense. I mean, why would you put a convention center in a city that only has 3 ways to get to it? Just put it in Miami.
Yeah.
Right next to the airport. Maybe Justin Bieber will show up there. So then the second iteration of that template was this thing we did on soil contamination. And it's called the land beneath the parks. And I refined the typography, so there's a lot of the same patterns to it.
Ads.
And ads. You gotta eat, I mean, seriously. And then it has better, I kind of canonize the way all these things get done. And then what I did with this one was the story still gets called in, it's still there, like it's still in the HTML file. I think I can actually just look at it. Or maybe not. Maybe you can't. I don't even know. No, you can't. It's all there. So then there's like these little things you can put in, and then I actually just wrote like a JFrame plugin that you can say, okay, it's just a function that you feed data to, and then it's like, okay, build me a little info box on the left of the story after paragraph 18, and then it would just say, hey, here it is. And then these little comment boxes are all written the same way, lots of pictures of kids, and there's a map you can just put in there, open a new window, and it looks exactly the same thing. So I mean, this is it's a little bit more refined, and it's the responsive issues of it were fixed. And then the Rick Scott Jobs project is where it got really crazy because I rewrote the entire plugin so it worked better, and I also added a bunch more things. And and then the way that this data gets called in is that it actually scrapes the Herald story, so it actually finds the real story on the Herald server. It scrapes the paragraph out of that. It pumps it into this one, and then it does the entire layout logic. And I think I'll show you the scripts.
One question. So then I also understand this JavaScript. Have you tried implementing backdoor?
No, I haven't. And I'm actually working with a couple of guys from corporate, McClatchy. I mean, they're not corporate, they're from Kansas City. But I think one of them they've started doing Backbone. But we're trying to incorporate it into the CMS that we're going to have. So that way, anybody in the company could just be like, okay, I want to use this template and do all these things with it. But no, I have not. To answer your question in a short way. So this, it loads this story, and then it removes the first paragraph because the first paragraph says, hey, there's a better version of this story available. click here to read it. And then it runs through all this layout logic, where it's like, okay, build a single photo after graph 25 with this URL, with this credit, and with this caption. So and that's it. It's just a bunch of just boring stuff. You know, you initiate the ads, you insert ad 1, 2 in the banner. And
So
then,
those side boxes then, they're designed never to change.
nope, they never change. It's just a template, and it's like little modules that you put where you want them. So I mean, that's it. That's really all the logic to it. And then you know, this system is continually improving. And I'll show you the documentation for it in a little bit. So I mean, all these things are exactly the same. I think I've shown you the rest of it. I mean, they all look exactly the same. This is maybe the other nicer design one, which is a nice little picture. But you know, it's exactly the same as the other one. It's a template, and it's easy to just crank them out. So then, this is the latest one that I can show you, because there's another huge thing, but I can't. It's confidential. So same format, except I think I fixed the way that the scripts work in this. Nope, still stupid. Oops. So again, same thing. And I guess the magic of this is that they literally all look the same, which is nice. But for this one, I built a custom audio player. So HHMIA audio, if anybody cares.
Yeah.
I'm gonna make a video player on Monday. It's gonna be a good time.
Do you have to put your old assets on it?
No. It's gonna be for like a series. So, and we're trying to get it's a really sensitive subject, so we can't like sell cars in front of it.
Yeah.
So,
Don't try though.
it will. I mean, yeah, it's gonna be weird. So yeah, again, so it's, I mean, I wish this was more exciting, but let's see. Then there's a gallery somewhere. Yeah, here we go. So then again, this is the same. It's a gallery that's powered, you know, on my end by really a JSON array. So again, same logic here. And here's the gallery. So it's like, okay, after graph 129, find this JSON file and build a gallery. And then the JSON, I'm sorry.
Can you give it, just out of curiosity, for each of these projects, can you give us a small figure of how long the product took, how much time you spent in coding and then designing, and then you can have any some data that you design? Because it seems that the life cycle of each of these small projects ends once it's published. You don't have to go back.
Yeah, they do. They definitely do. I mean, I'll probably go back and fix a couple of things, just things that shouldn't happen, mistakes. But as far as adding stuff, no. I mean, it's very much like an article. Like once you publish it, it's done. It's out there. People read it, and in a week, it ceases to exist in your conscience. It's over. But these projects, incrementally, they take less and less time because you do a lot of the work. A lot of the work you did in the previous project, you take that and bring it into the next one. That's a good segue.
Are you building yourself out of a job class?
I hope to, so I can move on with my life and do something else. I think I helped this guy in Macon, which is another McClatchy paper, build another kind of similar thing for their paper. And I pretty much did it for him, and it took 5 hours, and it was literally just writing new CSS and cropping all their photos. And I mean, it's the same, same, I guess, plugin that I wrote. It's a framework, yeah. And then I think I have it somewhere now. Projects.
Do you have a GitHub account? The source codes are.
For this, not yet, because we're gonna do something in like McClatchy, my paper's parent company. We're gonna build it out like properly, put it and then put it on GitHub, and then eventually open source it. Because right now it's rough. It's like half of it sometimes breaks, and then I have to go back and fix it. But I wrote some really basic documentation for it, just so as like a proof of concept for a lot of the other developers. And it's something simple like, okay, body, init, folios, and then that's a little sticky header that comes up the top. And then it's here a single photo. So the first paragraph of the story. After that, build me a photo. There's a photo. So I mean, it's a plugin for these layout tasks. So that's it.
Have you done anything with parallax?
Well, I haven't used that technique, but I'm actually working on a project, like a static page, that I'm going to be using parallax for. But parallax is really just making things move at different speeds when you scroll. So it's I'm sorry.
I was just curious. I noticed that you add a lot of content through JavaScript.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any emphasis on like search engine ranking or association?
Well, that's a really good question. I mean, really, what I'm doing is client-side templating. So when the search engine crawls a page, there's nothing there. There's just there's a title and there's like maybe a description. There doesn't have to be the entire story there. I mean, one solution to that I've been thinking about doing is just serving all the content there, and then when I load the page, kill it all and then put it back in. So I guess it improves that. But I mean, I haven't even thought about that because a lot of the stories that get these treatments aren't something that you would just naturally search for. There's something that people share like on Facebook and Twitter, or something that comes, that we put on our homepage and they get a lot of clicks on the homepage. But yeah, I mean that's a good point. I mean, it really has no search engine ranking because there's nothing there. It's just an empty HTML file. But yeah, and I guess that's it. That's all I have. So let's just talk about stuff now. What's up? Yeah. Well, it's the same way I'm doing it with everything else. So it lives somewhere in the directory, and with that same logic that I've been using, it's okay. After paragraph 12, there'll be an audio player, and then all you really need is an audio file. I think an MP3. Those are the two main ones. So you build out the HTML, and that's it.
Is that a single state or is?
Yeah, really the page loads, and then when the page loads, it carries out all those layout instructions. So the page almost loads twice, I guess. I guess it's asynchronous. Yeah.
So basically, because it's scraping another HTML file, so for the search engine question, like the Rick Scott job stories, they all live somewhere else, like on the side. So
they do, and then
just redirect them to page,
which is what we did.
Yeah.
So that's what we did, and then
the ranking is still high. If I search general Rick Scott jobs,
it will come up, because the title of the page is that, and I still have an H1 element in there that says Rick Scott, blah blah, so it still sort of shows up.
It's already loaded on the HTML itself. We're not giving it actually JSON right?
No, what I'm doing is when I load the page, I scrape a Herald story to the actual story. So I take all the paragraphs from a story in the system and then pump it into like a story well, and then do all my layout.
Part of this is probably because your current CMS doesn't allow for like bespoke design, right?
No. Yeah, it's kind of crap.
Are you responsible for how the story is formatted? How's it?
What do you mean format?
The one scraping citrus.
Oh no! I mean it's just text. I mean, and look, the good thing is our editors they do things in a pretty consistent way. So like they use subheads. So I know what I'm getting more than likely. But I let them do the story stuff, and then when the story stuff is done, I take it and then I do all the pretty stuff.
And they're doing it with a paragraph tags and anything.
Well, no, they do it through our CMS. We use something called NewsGate, and then it's and then there it publishes out to a server, and then the server builds a page, and then I scrape that page.
So if you haven't looked at a newsroom, like the new CMS is kind of a nightmare if you're trying to find a way with stuff that spits out. Basically, they're built for publishing and functionality in it. So when a reporter writes a story, they're writing a Word file. And then there's this whole like
thing.
Ridiculous sausage making festival. It's out what is really generic, usually, HTML.
Yeah, it's just literally paragraphs, and then subheads aren't really subheads. They're a span inside a paragraph. So it's not semantic by any means. It's sausage.
So, just a follow-up question on the parallax thing. I mean, I understand that technically it's like the way that things, but from a user perspective, it's a transition. So, like, you go from one part of the story, and then you go through some kind of, you know, visual thing that indicates, okay, now we're moving to the next part of the story. So, as a designer, like, I guess my question is, are you going to work on some of this stuff? Is there something that has, like, is this not really the Miami Herald style right now, or like, what's your take on that?
I mean, that's a good point, and there's actually a really big argument going on in these story designs, where it's like ultimately you're designing these things so people read the story. I guess. The verb for this is the snowfall. Snowfall was the first one we did. That did this. But then it's getting to a point where it's so much about the spectacle that, like, did you really read all of Snowfall? Nobody did. Everybody was just like, show me the next mountain. It's like, show me the snow. But it's a good point. Like the whole scrolling of the scroll event is great. But also I have to deal with editors and people and wards people, and then they don't want attention getting taken away from the story.
Wow.
And rightly so. I mean, neither do I. Like, I think a lot of the problem with design is designers. They just want to make everything sing and things pop out of everywhere. And I think a lot of it is using restraint. So I think in some cases, yes, like, let's parallax it all day. Yeah. But in some cases, for like the Rick Scott thing, it's like, what are we going to parallax?
Right.
Like, do we want to have Rick Scott kind of walk across the screen when so... It depends. I think some stories call for it, some don't, and I just haven't gotten a story that one has enough art for me to be able to do anything like that, or two that kind of fits the tone where that's appropriate.
Okay.
Can you talk a little bit about? I mean, the one cool thing about these long pieces is that for the first time in news world, visuals are getting the kind of attention that they get in print. Can you talk a little bit about that tension and like how did it go? I mean, were you working on this theme of words people and visual people, or is it like how does that work?
Well, really, it's just me. Like, I get the story, and then nobody tells me. It's like, oh, we should put that there. It's like, well, I just read the story, and it's just like, well, it makes sense to have a picture of the guy when he's mentioned, so I'll just put it there. And then I show it to my editor, and they don't complain. I mean, it's okay.
So how does the photo edits happen though? Like some of these are you doing like
I just crop it. I mean, I'm like, no. If somebody complains, I fix it. But it's very, very like, just make it happen.
Trust you, lad.
They don't have a choice, I guess. I mean, I wouldn't trust me, but it's it's a very, I mean, because it's so new that like there's no bureaucracy around it yet. It's nobody really knows what I do or how I do it. They just know that these pictures show up there, and then it's okay. Nobody's complaining yet, but I'm sure they will about something.
What's next technologically? Like, what are you, since you're a JavaScript guy, what are you guys talking about?
Well, I really need to learn how to like actually work with databases, because I'm tired of working with data. I mean, it's great, but I actually need to learn how to build a proper backend. I'm looking into maybe learning Node and getting into Mongo, but I need to find time to do that. I don't really have a lot of time on how to work, so. But that's for me. What's up?
When you said you guys don't matter, like tools, internal, anything else?
Well, I really, as a text editor, to write in, I use TextMate, which is, it's macro, really nice. The alpha, I think the TextMate 2 alpha is free, so if you want to test it out. I'm trying to get Coda. I'm trying to get my job to pay for Coda too, but I'll see how that goes. And then as far as FTP, I mean, I use Transmit, which is the same people who make Coda, which is a really nice interface. The terminal, I don't really do a lot of server-side stuff, so I don't really have a use for the terminal as of yet, but I'm sure I will. So.
You mentioned that this is very new, there's not much bureaucracy or knowledge. Is there anyone else in the Miami Herald does anything similar to what you do?
Well, no, as far as like special online projects, no, I'm the only one. So it's just
there's people who do like stuff.
Yeah, we have a web dev, but they deal with a lot of like making sure the databases for the stories are working properly. It's making sure the ad side of things are working properly, circulation. But it's more like multi-purpose, like let's make sure the company's running.
Right. And sorry, we missed the first part of the presentation. What title would that be?
For me, because I'm the data multimedia producer. I don't know what that means. It's just, they pay me, I go to work, and I leave. I don't ask too many questions. But yeah. Any questions or comments or things you guys would like to discuss?
Are you doing anything on sea level rise? Are you guys doing anything on sea level rise?
We did. WRN did a thing on sea level rise, and I was busy with something else, so I couldn't jump into that project. But actually, that's a really good segue. When I was at Seattle Times, they did a really big custom thing on sea level rise. Here we go. And it was kind of the same format. I guess I'll just show it to you. It's the same thing, and then here's you have moving, this little video, hopefully that'll play, if this computer can handle it. Thinking.
Yeah.
So, wow, it's still not playing. I guess it's just a poster. But, they did an entire thing on this, and I made these little animated infographics for them while I was an intern there. And it was supposed to be like an entire video player. Like I made a video player for it that would split up these clips, and then it would it was complicated, but they couldn't get it to work in Internet Explorer. What a shock! So that died a little bit. I might still have it up actually. If I do, it'd be cool. T video slider. It already sounds like I don't. No, I do. Forget that. So that's what it looks like. So it was supposed to be a lot smaller, but you hit play and then the thing plays, and then it takes forever because you're supposed to read it.
Yeah.
And then when it's done, you can have it previous and next, and then. So I did all the animation in After Effects, and then I just clipped the files, and then stored it in JSON. And then you just call in, you store the video like in a div behind the real video, and then you play it. It's not done the best way possible. See, and it broke. There you go. That's why I didn't use it. But yeah, wish I had more stuff. I guess I just went through it really quick. I was hoping you guys had lots of questions.
Get out of the news business, what are you going to do?
I don't really want to get out of the news biz. I think being a developer in a newsroom is great. Well, one, I think the work you do in a newsroom is important. It's really, it feels good to work in a newsroom. Because, we're not really trying to sell people anything, and it's great. And when you're not trying to sell people anything, you have so much freedom to, not sell stuff.
It's just such a natural.
Yeah, whatever. I gotta eat, right? Everybody's gotta eat.
So what do you want to do? If you want to work for are you interested in going to different organizations or freelancing?
I'm always up for freelancing. I think it keeps you fresh. I did a freelance gig a while ago for my old school, and I did it for no money practically. But it was fun because I got to mess around with sound and fake. I made a fake holiday card in HTML and CSS. It was the tackiest thing I've ever done in my life.
Where is it? Come on.
Oh God.
With that kind of build up, we must see it.
Yeah, we gotta see it, right? It's / I think it's projects. I hope it's there still. I think I deleted it out of shame. Is it there? Nope. No, I guess it's not. Sorry, guys. We won't see it. What's up?
From a design perspective, what considerations do you make for linking some sort of outputs?
Yeah, well, that's a good point. In a normal CMS, well, first of all, writers can link stories in the body copy because links come through, but they don't because they're all newspaper reporters and they don't understand that the internet is a living organism. But as far as as far as in my templates, a lot of it is where it makes sense. So, for example, in the Rick Scott series, you had a main bar, which is the main story for the day, and then you had 3 stories that were associated with it. So I tried to make sure that those 3 stories at some point were teased in the main story. So you know, at least it's there. So it's like, okay, if I'm really interested in this, maybe I want to read this thing. From a design point of view, you don't want to clutter it too much, especially because all these elements that you put on these stories, when you look at it on a phone, it's just like 3 paragraphs and then a block, 3 paragraphs and a block, and it gets kind of tiresome to read. And a lot of traffic comes from tiny screens nowadays.
How much do you know?
I mean, our analytics are set up pretty bad. I think 20% of it is unaccounted for. But I think at least 20% of our traffic is from mobile devices. Well, what makes me happy is that more people look at it on an iPhone than do IE8. So
you guys use any Bootstrap or anything like that? CSS framework?
No, I mean actually for these stories I've got my own CSS framework, and it's all built. Actually, I'll go back to this thing.
Like automation,
No, I use a very simple thing. It's based on the atomic design principle. So what I did was I took, I only use 2 fonts. Railway, which is this like rip-off of Gotham, and then Roboto Slab, which is what I use for body copy or anything else. So then you just combine all these primitive classes like, this is Raoul, Rob, red, gray, extra small, extra large, fat, heavier, lighter, upper. So that's for typography. But then I have a couple. I mean, I know there's like an entire argument for this to not do this. But for me, when I'm doing these projects, it's really easy for me to say, okay, I want this to be a really small, gray, uppercase, heavy, Raoul label instead of having to write an entire other class. And then a lot of the story stuff. It's a bunch of shells that are all responsive. So.
But what about grid design and responsive design? Like Bootstrap, that takes a lot of things for you,
Well, that's a good point. But then Bootstrap also gives you a lot of things that you might not even use. So I feel that with something like Bootstrap, I mean, if you're making an entire site, great. But if you're doing like one of these one-off projects where like we really don't have that many things to deal with, it's better just to start from scratch, and then you really only have to worry about making sure that your car is responsive and whatever elements you put in there respond to just take up the whole width when you're done. Because a lot of these things aren't even multi-column. If you look at 2013, yeah.
Can you give us a link to the documentation?
Yeah, sure, I will. Yeah. So I mean, with this, there's very little you really have to make responsive. I think the most we made responsive was this thing up top, and then the typography pretty much stays the same. And then all you have to worry about is like maybe 2 or 3 block elements that you have to make sure stop floating, and then take up the whole width. So to put in Bootstrap for that has like all these conditional rules and the form inputs and stuff like that, it's overkill. So I just decided to just start my own from scratch, simpler. I think you had your hand up. You must start by now.
Yeah, what do you borrow inspiration from anywhere, or ideas for ways to create charts?
I just copy the New York Times. That's the best rule in the business. Just copy whatever they're doing. I mean, they're really just the best in the world. But yeah. Just copy the New York Times. But as far as, one thing I actually made a very conscious effort of and I think you brought up something about how online design is now getting paid more attention to, like print design is, right? So a lot of the typography I tried to mimic with print paper. So that's why I picked this font, which is Railway, which looks like Gotham, which we use a lot in the paper. For now, when we stop paying money for it, we will. But yeah. New York Times, copy it all the time. What's up?
So you actually handcraft all the layouts for every single different project you do?
Well, more or less. I mean, I have templates. Like I have a template that I developed and I improve every time. This is why all these stories look kind of the same. The typography is always the same. But there's a couple of things like I might write a few CSS rules to make the background black, or I mean I'll just show you one. Don't tell anybody I showed you this. This is seriously, they'll find me. Oh look.
You can't.
There we go.
Not on the local network, man.
Yeah, no, it's not that. It's on my server, not theirs. So this is another one that we did, and it should work. Oh, I guess it's broken. No, it isn't. So I mean, this one, it's the same template, but it's it's white on black, and there might be a couple of elements like this, or like they're custom to the story. There might be these things that are custom to the story. So I mean, they're sort of handcrafted, but like I've done so much ahead of time that I can just focus on the icing instead of having to build, make the whole cake.
So how do you work with the whole workflow? So like, for example, when you start a new project, do you open a new text editor and just add in all the previous stuff you created?
Yeah,
and then start building on that?
Exactly, yeah. I mean, usually I just take the last project I did and, change a couple of lines of JavaScript to just take off the story and put in a new one and then just delete all the instructions. But yeah, I mean, and then I really, what differentiates the projects from one another is just a bunch of CSS to change type and stuff like that.
Are you interested in doing larger scale, like not instead of doing kind of these one-off things? Like, are you interested in doing things that are like larger product development kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, eventually I'd like to get into maybe build a CMS for these things, so you can actually, instead of having to write it all out in JavaScript, you can just have a GUI for it. I mean, that's something that's further down the line, but yeah. You have one?
Yes, besides SAS or any other rendering tools, what other tools or plugins do you use in daily?
I really don't use that many plugins, actually. I mean, I use jQuery for pretty much everything. Like, I don't really write JavaScript. I write jQuery. But plugins, I mean, I can't. I really don't. I use Tabletop to pull data from a Google spreadsheet. I used to use Handlebars to template, but now I just run a loop on the JSON I get back. And I think the one thing I have been using a lot is Isotope. I'm not sure. Do you guys know Isotope?
Yeah.
No, or yes or no? Yeah. Isotope is a bomb. It's like $15 for Yahoo. God, nasty. All right. So it's this thing where you pretty much generate a DOM and then you give it CSS classes, or you give it classes, and then you can do a bunch of really cool operations with it. So, and I think it's like $15 the license, which I got my job to pay for. $25, I'm lying. And it's really useful for a lot of like really simple data applications. But yeah. You look disappointed. No, I have no idea what I'm doing. So it's really not fancy.
Just a suggestion that I'm used to them to go over something that will be really killing the server side and loading stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You may use better templating for that.
Mm-hmm.
So you can just have it like from once and that should speed up the loading time.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Yeah, I'll do that.
Have you considered or have you heard of D3?
Yeah, D3 is awesome. Yeah, I just have to start diving into it.
Yeah.
It's one of those. Yeah, D3 is amazing. This presentation that I actually did it was by the same guy, Mike Bostock. He made this thing called Stack, which it's like a really easy like slideshow presentation tool. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Angular, for example, will help you a lot, I guess.
Yeah.
As a framework, and also backbone, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What's up?
The stories are one-off, but the readers, I imagine, aren't. What do you do to keep readers, to familiarize readers so that they know they're coming back to your page?
Well, do you mean as a website or as just that one project?
As those projects, as they relate to each other.
Well, I mean, a lot of the times the projects aren't related. I mean, they have that template in common, but I think the one where that makes sense is the Rick Scott, where there's a navigation up top, and then there's there's navigation on the bottom, so they know that they're reading a part in a series. And you also have all the sidebars linked up to the side. Eventually, I guess they're not. There they are. Yeah. Yep.
Cool. Anybody else? Questions?
Just one last question.
Yeah.
What inspired the decision to remove the scroll bar from the side and add the top one?
The what? The scroll bar?
Scroll bar?
The red.
There's no scroll bar across the top, unless there is.
Oh, that.
Oh, this?
Is there a scroll? I don't
No, that's just like a progress bar. That's how far along you are in the story.
Why'd
Yeah.
you add that?
Just so you know how far along you are in the story.
How long it's gonna take me to read?
Yeah, it's like, yeah, that thing's moving too slow. I'm out of here. Back to BuzzFeed. But yeah. Cool, guys. Well, thank you for having me.
Thank you.
I hope I wasn't dumb enough or something. It's
All right, guys. Let's give Laz a hand and then. If you guys want to hang out and just chit chat and whatever, we have the room for a little bit longer. And we're glad that you came. If you're not a normal Hacks Hackers visitor, we're really happy to have you here. And we hope you'll come back. Or if you're working on projects that relate to journalism or news in any way, we'd love to hear about them because we're always looking for folks who are kind of bridging those two worlds. All right, thanks a lot.
I see one student here.